Hello, Lad Lane Leopards. Our next video is Strega Nona versus the Bicycle Man.
Strega Nona, an original tale written and illustrated by Tommy DePaola. In a town in Calabria, a long time ago, there lived an old lady everyone called Strega Nona, which meant Grandma Witch. Although all the people in town talked about her in whispers, they all went to see her if they had troubles. Even the priest and the sisters of the convent went, because Strega Nona did have a magic touch. She could cure a headache with oil and water and a hairpin. She made special potions for girls who wanted husbands. And she was very good at getting rid of warts. But Strega Nona was getting old, and she needed someone to help her keep her little house and garden. So she put up a sign in the town square. And Big Anthony, who didn't pay attention, went to see her. "Anthony," said Strega Nona, "you must sweep the house and wash the dishes. You must weed the garden and pick the vegetables. You must feed the goat and milk her, and you must fetch the water. For this, I will give you 3 coins and a place to sleep and food to eat." "Oh, grazie," said Big Anthony. "The one thing you must never do," said Strega Nona, "is touch the pasta pot. It is very valuable, and I don't let anyone touch it." "Oh, see, yes," said Big Anthony. And so the days went by. Big Anthony did his work, and Strega Nona met with the people who came to see her for headaches and husbands and warts. Big Anthony had a nice bed to sleep in next to the goat shed, and he had food to eat. One evening, when Big Anthony was milking the goat, he heard Strega Nona singing. Peeking in the window, he saw Strega Nona standing over the pasta pot. She sang, "Bubble, bubble, pasta pot, boil me some pasta nice and hot. I'm hungry and it's time to sup. Boil enough pasta to fill me up." And the pasta pot bubbled and boiled and was suddenly filled with steaming hot pasta. Then Strega Nona sang, "Enough, enough pasta pot. I have my pasta nice and hot. So simmer down my pot of clay until I'm hungry another day." "How wonderful," said Big Anthony. "That's the magic pot for sure." And Strega Nona called Big Anthony in for supper. But too bad for Big Anthony, because he didn't see Strega Nona blow 3 kisses to the magic pasta pot. And this is what happened. The next day, when Big Anthony went to the town square to fetch the water, he told everyone about the pasta pot. And naturally, everyone laughed at him, because it sounded so silly. A pot that cooked all by itself? "You'd better go and confess to the priest, Big Anthony," they said. "Such a lie." And Big Anthony was angry, and that wasn't a very good thing to be. "I'll show them," he said to himself. "Someday I'll get the pasta pot and make it cook, and then they'll be sorry." That day came sooner than even Big Anthony would have thought, because 2 days later, Strega Nona said to Big Anthony, "Anthony, I must go over the mountain to the next town to see my friend Strega Amelia. Sweep the house and weed the garden. Feed the goat and milk her for your lunch. There are some bread and cheese in the cupboard. And remember, don't touch the pasta pot." "Oh, yes, yes, Strega Nona," said Big Anthony. But inside he was thinking, "My chance has come." As soon as Strega Nona was out of sight, Big Anthony went inside, pulled the pasta pot off the shelf, and put it on the floor. "Now let's see if I can remember the words," said Big Anthony. And Big Anthony sang, Bubble, bubble, pasta pot. Boil me some pasta, nice and hot. I'm hungry and it's time to sup. Boil enough pasta to fill me up. And sure enough, the pot bubbled and boiled and began to fill up with pasta. Aha, said Big Anthony, and he ran to the town square, jumped on the fountain, and shouted, "Everyone get forks and plates and platters and bowls. Pasta for all at Stregonona's house. Big Anthony has made the magic pasta pot work." Of course, everyone laughed, but ran home to get forks and plates and platters and bowls. And sure enough, when they got to Stregonona's, the pasta pot was so full, it was beginning to overflow. Big Anthony was a hero. He scooped out pasta and filled the plates and platters and bowls. There was more than enough for all the townspeople, including the priest and the sisters from the convent. And some people came back for 2 and 3 helpings, but the pot was never empty. When all had had their fill, Big Anthony sang, "Enough, enough, my pasta pot. I have my pasta nice and hot. So simmer down my pot of clay until I'm hungry another day." But alas, he did not blow the 3 kisses. He went outside to the applause of the crowd. Big Anthony took a bow. He was so busy listening to compliments from everyone that he didn't notice the pasta pot was still bubbling and boiling, until a sister from the convent said, "Oh, Big Anthony, look!" The pasta was pouring out of the pot all over the floor of Stregonona's house and was coming out the door. Big Anthony rushed in and shouted the magic words again, but the pot kept bubbling. He took the pot off the floor, but pasta kept on pouring from it. Big Anthony grabbed a cover and put it on the pot and sat on it. But the pasta raised the cover, and Big Anthony as well, and spilled on the floor of Stregonona's house. "Stop!" yelled Big Anthony. But the pasta did not stop, and if someone hadn't grabbed poor Big Anthony, the pasta would have covered him up. The pasta had all but filled the little house. Out of the windows and through the doors came the pasta, and the pot just kept right on bubbling. The townspeople began to worry. "Do something, Big Anthony!" they shouted. Big Anthony sang the magic song again, but without the 3 kisses, it did no good. By the time the pasta was on its way down the road, and all the people were running to keep ahead of it. "We must protect our town from the pasta," shouted the mayor. "Get mattresses, tables, doors, anything to make a barricade." But even that didn't work. The pot kept bubbling and the pasta kept coming. "We are lost," said the people. And the priest and the sisters of the convent began praying. "The pasta will cover our town," they cried. And it certainly would have, had Stregonona not come down the road, home from her visit. She didn't have to look twice to know what had happened. She sang the magic song and blew the 3 kisses, and with a sputter, the pot stopped boiling, and the pasta came to a halt. "Oh, grazie! Thank you, Stregonona," the people cried. But then they turned on poor Big Anthony. "String him up!" the men of the town shouted. "Now wait," said Stregonona. "The punishment must fit the crime." And she took a fork from a lady standing nearby and held it out to Big Anthony. "All right, Anthony. You wanted pasta from my magic pasta pot," Strega Nona said. "And I want to sleep in my little bed tonight. So start eating." And he did. Poor Big Anthony. The end.
The Bicycle Man by Alan Say. When I was a small boy, I went to a school in the South Island of Japan. The schoolhouse stood halfway up a tall green mountain. It was made of wood, and the wood was gray with age. When a strong wind blew, the trees made the sound of waves, and the building creaked like an old sailing ship. From the playground, we could see the town, the ships in the harbor, and the shining sea. One fine spring day, we had our sports day. All the children and teachers were out in the playground long before the first bell rang. "Did everybody remember to bring a headband?" asked Mrs. Morita. She was our first grade teacher. Eagerly, we showed her our headbands. They were red on one side and white on the other. "Remember, we're on the red team," she told us. We swept the playground with all the brooms in the school. We tied colored flags and streamers to bamboo poles. We drew white lines on the ground with powdered chalk. Our parents came carrying tiered lunch boxes and kettles filled with tea. They spread their straw mats and sat around the oval track. When everything was ready, Mrs. Morita rang the bell. It was 9 o'clock. The principal stood on the platform and said, "Parents, children, my fellow teachers, let us remember that we are gathered here in the spirit of sportsmanship. Whether we win or lose, let us enjoy ourselves." We cheered and clapped our hands. The youngest children were the first to race. We lined up 6 at a time at the starting line. "Ready, set, go!" Mr. Oka, the art teacher, boomed at us. We first graders leaped out and dashed around the track. Parents and teachers ran alongside of us, yelling encouragement. The older children waved flags and headbands and shouted at the top of their lungs until the mountain echoed the noise like rumbling thunder. The winners went up to the judges' table and received prizes from the principal. The prizes were wrapped in white paper and tied with gold threads. Inside, there were oranges and rice cakes and pencils. By the time the 6th graders finished running, it was lunchtime, and that was the best part of the sports day. My mother had cooked for 2 days, preparing the good things to eat. The layers of lacquered boxes held pickled melon rinds and egg rolls, spiced rice and fish cakes. There were apples and peaches and sweets of all sorts. In the afternoon, we had the tug of war and piggyback races. After that, the grown-ups had a race of their own. Parents and teachers paired up and tied their ankles together with headbands and hopped around the oval. We screamed with delight when they stumbled and fell on top of one another. We were cheering Mrs. Morita and someone's father when a hush fell on the playground. We stopped moving and talking and stared toward the gate. 2 strangers were leaning over the fence and watching us. They were American soldiers. One of them was a white man with bright hair like fire, and the other man had a face as black as the earth. They wore dark uniforms with neckties, soft caps on their heads, and red stripes on their sleeves. They had no guns. "Look how black he is! Look at that red hair," he whispered. The war had been over for only a short while, not even 1 year. American soldiers had a base in the harbor, but we had never seen them in our mountain. I felt afraid. The foreigners smiled and waved at us. When the black man cleared the fence and came toward us, we all drew back and stared. He was the tallest man I had ever seen, and his clothes, such sharp creases, and his shoes shone like polished metal. The soldier walked in huge strides toward the school entrance where the principal's bicycle stood. He pointed at the bicycle and turned to the judge's table. The principal stood up slowly. "He wants the bicycle," someone said. "Maybe he doesn't know what it is." "No, he wants to ride it." The principal walked up to the American and bowed. He looked like a small boy greeting a giant. The tall man gave a deep bow, almost bumping heads with the principal. We started to giggle. We watched them talk to each other with their hands. The principal pointed at the bicycle, then at the man, and nodded. "Yes, you are welcome to ride my bicycle," he seemed to say. The soldier put the palms of his hands together and smiled. The man took the bicycle by the handlebar, kicked up the stand, and rolled it out to the center of the playground. He motioned us to make room and then called to his friend. The other American was nearly as tall as the black man. He took off his cap and saluted us with a big bow. We giggled and bowed back. The strangers spoke to each other and nodded. The black man took off his jacket and handed it to the white man. Then he hoisted a long leg over the bicycle and began to pedal it around and around in a widening circle. His friend waved the jacket like a flag and cheered him to go faster. Suddenly, the rider yanked on the handlebars and lifted the front wheel off the ground. "Oh, look," we stirred. "How can he ride like that? What an athlete," said the art teacher. The red-haired man was the ringmaster. He ran alongside of the bicycle and shouted encouragement. The rider went round and round with only one wheel, zigzagging this way and that. We were amazed. Then he rode backwards. He sat on the bicycle with his body turned around. He had to twist his neck to see where he was going. He worked his long arms and legs like a huge dancing spider. He howled with wonder. The man rode backwards, then forwards, twirling the front wheel like a spinning gyroscope. He shouted something to the ringmaster, who grasped the carrier and began to push as fast as he could. Then he let go. The bicycle shot forward with great speed. The rider stood up on the pedals and, leaning on the handlebar, put both his feet up on the carrier. He was in the air. His cap flew off and his necktie fluttered in the wind. He seemed to be flying free, cruising like an enormous dragonfly. "Oh, oh," we exclaimed and gasped in turn. When the bicycle finally came to a stop, the playground roared with clapping of hands and shouting. The rider panted heavily and laughing. The ringmaster rushed up to him and lifted him in a bear hug. We mobbed around them, jumping and yelling. The principal struggled through the crowd, and the black man reached out to him. They gripped each other's arms like old friends. The principal raised his arms to quiet us down. He took the soldiers' hands and led them to the platform. There, he whispered something to Mrs. Merida as she brought him the largest box from the prize table. The principal stood on the platform and held out the box to the Americans. He looked like the emperor awarding a great champion. The bicycle rider received the gift with both hands and lifted it high above his head. Then he turned to the crowd. "Arigato, arigato," he said. "Thank you, thank you." The whole school bowed to him and shouted for joy. The Americans put their caps on and walked out the gate with their prize. They went down the mountain, arm in arm, waving and laughing. We followed them with our eyes until they disappeared around the bend in the road.
I hope you enjoy both books, and don't forget to vote at the end.